Commander Daewon stood on the platform above 10,000 young faces. They looked at him like he was a hero. Every single one of them believed the stories. The medals on his chest caught the light from the station's artificial sun, and the crowd whispered in admiration. He hated every second of it. The Galactic Council War Memorial Station orbited a dead moon. 50 years ago, that moon had been green and full of life. The Vren had killed it during their invasion. Now it served as a reminder. Every year, new soldiers graduated here, standing in the shadow of what they were supposed to prevent. Daewon gave his speech. He talked about duty and honor. He talked about sacrifice and courage. His voice was steady because he had given this speech dozens of times. The words came automatically now, empty and rehearsed. When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause. A young cadet approached during the reception. She was human, barely old enough to wear the uniform. Her name tag read Private Chen. She saluted with perfect form. "Commander Daewon, sir," she said. "I read about the Battle of Corvin Belt. You were there when the humans fought alongside the Galactic Fleet. What was it like, sir?" "Fighting with my people." Daewon's hand froze halfway to his glass. The room seemed to tilt. He saw Lieutenant Hyo-jin moving quickly through the crowd toward him. His aide had good instincts. "The battle was successful," Daewon said carefully. "Many brave soldiers from many worlds fought that day." "But the humans, sir," Private Chen pressed on. "The records say they turned the tide. My grandmother was there. Captain Bora. She died at Corvin Belt. I wanted to know—" "Your questions are noted, Private," Hyo-jin interrupted smoothly, stepping between them. "The commander has another appointment. Perhaps you could submit your inquiries through official channels." Private Chen looked disappointed but saluted again. Daewon watched her walk away. Captain Bora's granddaughter? Of course she was. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Hyo-jin guided him to a quiet corner. She was young for a lieutenant, sharp and ambitious. She had requested assignment to Daewon specifically because of his reputation. She had no idea what that reputation was built on. "Are you well, sir?" she asked. "Fine," Daewon lied. "Just tired, but he was not fine." The moment Private Chen mentioned Corvin Belt, he was back there. 28 years old again, commanding his first major fleet action, watching the human ships charge forward while he sat frozen in his command chair, unable to give the order to follow. He remembered Captain Bora's face on the view screen. She was laughing. Her ship was surrounded by Vren boarders. Her hull was breached in 40 places, and she was laughing as she steered her dying ship into the enemy formation. The explosion had lit up the entire battlefield. The reception ended. Daewon returned to his quarters and poured himself a drink. He had stopped counting how many years had passed since Corvin Belt. The number did not matter. The memory never faded. His console beeped. Incoming priority message from Galactic Command. Daewon almost ignored it. Priority messages usually meant more ceremonies or more speeches, more chances to be the hero he was not. But something made him open it. The message was short. Emergency council session. All senior commanders report immediately. The Vren have returned. His glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the floor, but he did not hear it. The Vren. 50 years of silence, 50 years of peace, and now they were back. Another message arrived. His deployment orders. Daewon sat down slowly. His hands were shaking. Around him, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Other commanders were receiving the same news. The Vren had attacked 3 frontier colonies. The attacks were coordinated and brutal. This was not a raid. This was an invasion. Hyo-jin burst into his quarters without knocking. "Sir, did you see—" "I saw," Daewon said quietly. "The council wants all veterans from the First War," Hyo-jin said. Her eyes were bright with excitement. She had never seen combat. To her, this was an opportunity. "Sir, you'll finally get to lead a real fleet again. Not just ceremonies and training exercises." Daewon looked at his aide. She was so young, so eager. She had no idea what war with the Vren meant. She had not seen the footage from the occupied worlds. She had not watched the Vren turn captured prisoners into living broadcasts, screaming for days until their bodies finally gave out. "Hyo-jin," he said, "bring me the personnel files for Earth's military command." "Earth, sir?" "Why? Just do it." She left, confused but obedient. Daewon walked to his window. Outside, ships were already beginning to move. The Galactic Fleet was mobilizing. Somewhere out there, the Vren were coming. and somewhere else humanity was preparing to answer the call. He thought about Captain Bora, about her laughter, about the way she had looked at him through the view screen in those final seconds, as if she expected him to understand why she was doing what she was doing. He had not understood then. He did not understand now, but he remembered the fear, the pure primal terror of watching someone willingly die in a way that made tactical sense, but violated every survival instinct that evolution had given him. Hyojin returned with the files. Earth is sending Admiral Tae Yang, she reported. She's the senior commander of their defense fleet. And, sir, you should know, she's Captain Bora's granddaughter. Of course she was. Daewon opened his desk drawer. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He had written it years ago and updated it regularly. It was his resignation letter. All he had to do was sign it and submit it. He could claim medical issues, age, anything. No one would question the great commander Daewon stepping down. He picked up the pen. Outside his window, more ships launched. The first waves of the fleet heading toward the frontier. They would need every commander, every veteran. The Vren were back and the galaxy was calling on its heroes. Daewon looked at the resignation letter for a long time. Then he put down the pen and closed the drawer. He was going to war. Not because he was brave, not because he was ready, but because refusing would require explaining why. And explaining why would mean admitting the truth about Corvin Belt, that the great commander Daewon, hero of the Vren War, had spent the most important battle of his life frozen in terror, while humans died to save everyone else. The metals on his uniform felt heavier than ever. The council chamber was the largest room on Unity Station. It could hold 500 delegates comfortably. Today it felt too small. Daewon sat in the Tular Federation section, Hyojin beside him. Around them, dozens of other commanders and ambassadors filled their seats. Every species in the Galactic Alliance was represented, and every single veteran from the First Vren War wore the same expression. They were afraid. Hyojin noticed it too. She leaned close to Daewon and whispered, "Sir, why does everyone look so tense? These are decorated war heroes. They should be confident." Daewon said nothing. Across the chamber, Ambassador Kieran of the Vraxian Collective caught his eye. Kieran was old now, his scales faded to pale gray. But Daewon remembered when those scales had been bright blue, back when they were both young officers at Corvin Belt. Kieran looked away quickly. The council head called the session to order. The briefing began with the bad news. 3 colonies destroyed, estimated casualties in the millions. The Vren fleet was larger than before, better equipped. They had spent 50 years rebuilding. "We need an immediate military response," the council head said. "I'm calling on all experienced commanders to take positions in the defense fleet." Silence. Then Commander Saran of the Kefin Union stood up. He was covered in medals, a famous strategist who had written textbooks on fleet tactics. "I recommend we establish a defensive perimeter," he said. "Pull back our frontier forces and consolidate." "Pull back?" someone asked. "That would abandon 4 more colonies." "Better to sacrifice a few colonies than risk the core worlds," Saran replied. His voice was steady, but Daewon saw his hands gripping the podium. "We need time to assess the Vren capabilities." Other veterans began agreeing. Yes, defensive positions. Yes, reconnaissance first. Yes, anything except direct engagement. They used tactical language and strategic reasoning, but Daewon heard the truth underneath. They were buying time. Time to avoid fighting. The debate continued for an hour. Every suggestion involved delay or retreat. Hyojin was getting frustrated. She kept looking at Daewon, waiting for him to speak up. But he remained silent. What could he say? He agreed with them. The Vren were terrifying. Direct engagement was suicide. Unless you were human. "This is insane," Hyojin whispered. "These are the heroes of the First War. Why are they acting like cowards?" "Because they remember," Daewon said quietly. "Remember what?" Before he could answer, the chamber doors opened. A human delegation entered. They wore simple gray uniforms without excessive decoration. At their head walked an elderly woman with short white hair. Her uniform displayed only 2 medals. She moved slowly but with absolute certainty. The chamber went quiet. "I apologize for our late arrival," the woman said. Her voice carried easily despite her age. "I am Admiral Tae Yang, representing Earth's Defense Command. We received the Council's summons and came as quickly as possible." Daewon watched several commanders stand up and leave. They did not run. They did not make excuses. They simply walked out. Ambassador Kiran was among them. Admiral Tae Yang noticed but said nothing. She took her seat in the human delegation section. There were only 5 humans total. 5 people to represent an entire world. The council head looked uncomfortable. "Admiral Tae Yang, welcome. We were just discussing strategic options for responding to the Vren threat." "I see," Tae Yang said. "What have you decided?" "We're considering a defensive approach. Consolidate forces, establish secure perimeters, gather intelligence before committing to major engagement." "That's a mistake," Tae Yang said simply. "The Vren respect strength. If you pull back, they'll see weakness and push harder." Commander Saran stood up again. "With respect, Admiral, the Vren fleet outnumbers us 3-1. A direct assault would be catastrophic." "Then don't assault them directly," Tae Yang replied. "Hit their supply lines. Board their command ships. Make them afraid of you." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Board Vren command ships? That was suicide. The Vren used biological weapons inside their own vessels. Anyone who boarded a Vren ship was as good as dead. Daewon saw Hyojin's eyes widen as she understood. That was exactly what humans had done at Corvin Belt. The session ended without any decisions. The council would reconvene the next day. As delegates filed out, Hyojin grabbed Daewon's arm. "Sir, I need to understand something. Why did those commanders leave when Admiral Tae Yang arrived?" "Because they know what she represents," Daewon said. "Which is? Come with me." He led her to the military archives deep in the station. Access to the classified section required senior command clearance. Daewon had never used it before. He had spent 25 years avoiding this room. The archivist was a young Kefin who looked nervous when Daewon requested files from the Battle of Corvin Belt. "Sir, those files are restricted to—" "I was there," Daewon interrupted. "I have clearance." The archivist brought up the files. Most were standard after-action reports, but buried deep in the classified section was the combat footage. Raw, unedited recordings from various ships during the battle. "Watch," Daewon told Hyojin. He selected a file at random. The screen showed the view from a Tuller cruiser. The battle was going badly. Vren ships surrounded them. Then human vessels appeared on the edge of the formation. They did not request orders. They did not coordinate. They just charged straight into the Vren center. Hyojin watched in silence as the human ships tore into the enemy formation. They fought in ways that made no tactical sense. Ships with hull breaches stayed in combat. Vessels that should have retreated kept pushing forward. When the Vren boarded them, the humans rigged their ships to explode. One recording showed a human boarding party attacking a Vren dreadnought. They had no chance of victory. The Vren outnumbered them 10-1. But the humans did not retreat. They fought room by room, and when they finally died, they had sabotaged the dreadnought's navigation system. It drifted into an asteroid field and broke apart. Another video showed Captain Bo-Ra's final moments. Her ship was dying. She could have evacuated her crew. Instead, she aimed her vessel at 3 Vren capital ships and overloaded her reactor. The explosion destroyed all 3 targets. Her last transmission was short. "Today's a good day." She was smiling. Hyojin stared at the screen long after the video ended. Her hands were shaking. That's insane. Why would anyone fight like that?" "That's what every veteran asks," Daewon said. "That's why they leave when humans arrive. Not because humans are cowards. Because humans are willing to do things that shouldn't be possible." "But we won the war," Hyojin said. "We're heroes. The Alliance defeated the Vren." "No," Daewon said quietly. "The humans defeated the Vren. The rest of us just watched and took credit." He told her the truth then, about how he had frozen during the battle, about how he had watched humans die while he sat paralyzed in his command chair. about how the official reports had been edited to make everyone look brave. That's why the veterans run, he finished. Because we know what happens when humans fight, and we know we can't match them. That night, Daewon found Ambassador Kieran on an observation deck. The old Vraxian was drinking something that looked toxic, but probably wasn't. He did not seem surprised when Daewon joined him. You saw the recordings, Kieran said. It was not a question, I showed them to my aide. Poor girl. Kieran took another drink. Do you know what I did at Corvin Belt? You commanded the Vraxian Third Fleet. I commanded them to run, Kieran said. The moment the humans started their charge, I ordered full retreat. I told myself it was tactical, that we would regroup and counterattack. But the truth is I was terrified. I saw what they were doing and I could not comprehend it. So I ran. But you came back, Daewon said. After the battle you came back. After the humans had already won. Kieran finished his drink. And then we all pretended we had been brave. We gave each other medals and told stories about our courage. We built monuments to our sacrifice. And we never ever talked about what really happened. The humans never corrected us, Daewon observed. No, they let us have our pride. I think that makes it worse. They stood in silence, watching ships prepare for departure. Somewhere out there, the Vren were coming, and somewhere else Admiral Tae-Yang was preparing her forces. She's going to do it again, Kieran said. Whatever insane thing her grandmother did, she's going to do the same. And we're going to watch, and then we're going to take credit again. Not this time, Daewon said. This time I'm going to help. Even if I can't fight like they do, I can at least try not to run. Kieran looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Then I suppose I will too. We're too old to learn courage. But maybe we're not too old to learn shame. The next morning, Admiral Tae-Yang called for volunteers to join her strike force. Most veterans stayed away, but Commander Daewon stepped forward. So did Ambassador Kieran. And slowly, a few others joined them. Not many, not enough, but it was a start. Hyo-jin could not sleep. She kept seeing the recordings from Corvin Belt. Captain Bo-Ra's smile. The human boarding parties fighting impossible odds. Ships exploding with their crews still inside. She found Daewon in his office at 3 a.m. He was not sleeping either. Sir, I need to understand, she said. Why do humans fight like that? Are they just crazy? Daewon looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled up another file on his console. Watch this one, he said. This is the complete recording of the Battle of Corvin Belt, not the edited version. The full 7 hours. Hyo-jin sat down. Daewon started the playback from the beginning. The battle began badly. The Galactic fleet had 200 ships positioned around a mining colony on the belt's edge. Intelligence said the Vren were coming with maybe 300 vessels. They were wrong. The Vren arrived with 500. Young Commander Daewon appeared on screen looking confident in his command chair. Hyo-jin barely recognized him. He was so young, so certain of himself. The Vren attack was brutal and coordinated. They did not just want to destroy the fleet. They wanted to make it suffer. When they captured the first galactic ship, they broadcast what they did to the crew. The screaming lasted for hours. On screen, young Daewon's confidence began to crack. He issued orders mechanically, following standard defensive doctrine. But anyone watching could see the truth. They were losing. The Vren were winning. Then the human ships arrived. 30 vessels, small compared to the main fleet. They came in from an unusual angle, bypassing the standard jump coordinates. On the recording, multiple officers reported it as a navigation error. The humans had dropped out of jump too close to the battlefield, but it was not an error. Human vessels, this is Fleet Command, young Daewon said on the recording. Fall back to Formation Point Delta. We are executing Defensive Pattern 7. A woman's face appeared on screen. Captain Bo-Ra. She looked to be in her 40s with short dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Fleet Command, this is Captain Bo-Ra of the Earth vessel Indomitable. We read your situation as critical. We're going to punch through their center. Negative, Captain. That's a suicide run. Fall back to... But the human ships were already moving. They broke formation and charged directly at the Vren center. Every tactical display showed it as insanity. They would be surrounded in seconds. Hyo-jin watched the battle unfold. The humans did not fight like any military she had studied. They ignored standard doctrine completely. One human destroyer lost its main guns in the first exchange. Instead of retreating, it accelerated toward a Vren cruiser and rammed it. The collision destroyed both ships. But before the destroyer died, its crew ejected in powered armor and used their suit thrusters to crash into another Vren vessel's bridge. A human frigate got boarded by Vren soldiers. The standard response was to seal off the infected sections and jump away. Instead, the human crew rigged their reactor to overload and lured more Vren ships close. When the reactor exploded, it took out 4 enemy vessels. Captain Bora's ship attracted the most attention. She broadcast messages on all Vren channels, insulting them in their own language. 3 Vren dreadnoughts broke formation to attack her specifically. "That's it," someone said on the Galactic Fleet Command channel. "Bora's dead." She took on 3 dreadnoughts alone. But Bora's ship kept fighting. Even as hull breaches appeared, even as atmosphere vented into space, even as Vren boarding parties swarmed through her corridors. On the recording, Hyojin heard Bora's voice cutting through the chaos. "All hands, this is the captain. I'm activating emergency protocol Omega. If you have any last messages, record them now. You have 90 seconds. Protocol Omega," an officer on the Galactic Fleet asked. "What's Protocol Omega?" They found out soon enough. Captain Bora steered her dying ship directly toward the 3 Vren dreadnoughts. They saw it coming. They fired everything they had. But Bora's ship kept going, trailing debris and bodies. When she was close enough that collision was inevitable, she sent one final transmission. "Fleet Command, this is Captain Bora. Today's a good day. Tell my granddaughter I'm proud of her." Then to her crew, "It has been an honor." She overloaded the reactor. The explosion was massive. All 3 Vren dreadnoughts disappeared in the blast. So did 2 more ships that were too close. 5 major Vren vessels destroyed in exchange for 1 damaged human frigate. On the recording, young Daewon sat frozen in his command chair. The math was obvious. 5 enemy capital ships for 1 friendly vessel. It was the best trade ratio in the entire battle. Bora had just won the fight, but she had done it by killing herself and her entire crew. "Someone give me the human casualty count," Daewon said quietly. Indomitable had a crew of 320. An officer reported. "All hands lost. 320 people." They had all known what Protocol Omega meant. They had 90 seconds to record final messages. And then they died because their captain decided the math was worth it. The recording continued. Other human ships kept fighting with the same impossible tactics. They treated their own lives as ammunition. When humans got boarded, they would fight to the command deck and then overload everything. When humans lost weapons, they would ram. When humans lost shields, they would close to point-blank range. Colonel Gisiok led a boarding party onto a Vren carrier. His team of 40 soldiers fought through 800 Vren to reach the ship's core. They could not take the ship. They could not hold it. So they destroyed the navigation system and the communications array, then died fighting their way back to their boarding craft. The Vren carrier drifted blind and deaf into a minefield. It exploded with 3,000 Vren aboard. 40 humans traded for 3,000 Vren. "Why aren't you helping them?" Hyojin heard herself say to the screen. She knew Daewon was watching her reaction, but she could not help it. Why is the Galactic Fleet just sitting there? On screen, young Daewon was asking himself the same question. He opened fleet channels multiple times, started to give orders, then stopped. His hands gripped his chair's armrests until his knuckles turned pale. "All ships prepare to—" He started, then stopped. "All ships maintain defensive positions." He gave that order 5 times during the battle. Each time, human ships were dying. Each time, the math said a coordinated push could save them. Each time, Daewon froze. Ambassador Kieran's Vraxian fleet actually retreated. They jumped away, leaving the humans alone in the center of the Vren formation. And somehow, impossibly, the humans won. Not because they were better equipped. Not because they had superior numbers. But because the Vren broke. They had never encountered a species that treated death as an acceptable resource. Every time they destroyed a human ship, another would come at them doing something even more insane. The Vren started retreating. Then retreating faster. Then running. The humans pursued. Not to destroy them, but to make sure they kept running. When the battle ended, the Galactic Fleet had lost 80 ships. The human contingent had lost 27 out of 30. But the Vren had lost over 300 vessels. It was the most one-sided victory in modern galactic history, and young Commander Day-Wan had spent the entire battle paralyzed in his chair. The recording ended. Hyojin sat in silence for a long time. "That's what really happened," Day-Wan said quietly. "That's why veterans run when humans arrive. Because we know what they're willing to do, and we know we can't match it. But why?" Hyojin asked. "Why do humans fight like that? Don't they value their lives?" "I think they value them differently than we do," Day-Wan said. "I've spent 25 years trying to understand. The best answer I have is that humans do math differently. They calculate costs and benefits just like we do, but the numbers they use are different." He pulled up Captain Bora's service record. She had a daughter, a husband waiting at home. She wanted to live, but she also saw 5 enemy capital ships that would kill thousands if they survived. So she did the math. 320 lives, including hers, in exchange for saving thousands. The equation was obvious to her. "That's not obvious," Hyojin said. "That's insane." "To us," Day-Wan agreed. "But not to them. Humans evolved on what they call a death world. Everything on their planet tried to kill them. They learned to do whatever it took to survive, even if whatever it took meant dying." Hyojin shook her head. "I don't understand that. How can dying help you survive?" "Because survival isn't about the individual. It's about the species, the tribe, the mission." Day-Wan closed the files. Captain Bora died, but her action saved the colony, saved the fleet, saved thousands of people who went on to have children and grandchildren. In human math, she didn't lose. She won. "And now her granddaughter is going to do the same thing," Hyojin said quietly. "Probably." "Are you going to freeze again, sir?" It was a bold question, the kind that could end a career. But Day-Wan did not get angry. He just looked tired. "I don't know," he admitted. "That's the truth, Hyojin. I don't know if I can overcome my own instincts. Every cell in my body will be screaming at me to run when I see what the humans do. But I'm going to try, because I owe it to Captain Bora and everyone like her." "I'm going with you," Hyojin said. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Someone needs to watch. Someone needs to remember what actually happens, not the edited version." The joint military staging area looked like organized chaos. Ships from a dozen different species filled the docking bays. Supplies moved through cargo corridors. Thousands of soldiers prepared for deployment. But when the human contingent arrived, everything changed. Hyojin noticed it immediately. The noise level dropped. Personnel from other species found reasons to be elsewhere. Entire sections of the staging area emptied as the human ships docked. "They're afraid," she said to Day-Wan. "Yes," he agreed. "And the humans know it." The human fleet was small. 50 ships compared to the Galactic Alliance's 300. But those 50 ships drew more attention than all the others combined. Soldiers watched from observation decks as the human vessels moved into position. They watched the same way you would watch a dangerous predator, with respect and fear. Admiral Tae-Young requested a coordination meeting with senior galactic commanders. Day-Wan attended, bringing Hyojin as his aide. The meeting room was large enough for 30 people. Only 12 showed up. Every single one was a veteran from the First Vren War. The young commanders had all found excuses to skip the meeting. Tae-Young entered with her small staff. She moved slowly, her age showing in every step. But her eyes were sharp. She noticed the empty seats. She noticed the way veterans avoided looking directly at her. "Thank you for coming," she said, taking her seat. "I know this is difficult." No one responded. "I'm told the Vren have fortified their position in the Corvin Belt," Tae-Yang continued. "The same location as the first battle. That's not a coincidence. They're trying to provoke us. They want us to attack their strongest position." "Then we won't," Commander Soran said. "We'll bypass the belt and strike their supply lines instead." "That could work," Tae-Yang agreed. "But it will take months, maybe years. The Vren will use that time to attack more colonies. Millions will die." "Millions will die anyway if we attack their fortifications," Soren replied. His voice was steady, but Hyojin saw his hands shaking. "We need to be smart about this." "Smart," Tae-Yang repeated. "Yes, let me ask you something, Commander Soren. Were you at Corvin Belt?" The room went very quiet. "I was," Soren admitted. "Then you remember what happened. You remember how we fought." "I remember." Soren's voice was barely a whisper now. Tae-Yang looked around the table. "You're all afraid of us. Every single one of you. You've been afraid for 50 years, and I'm tired of pretending we don't notice. Daewon felt his stomach tighten. This was it, the conversation they had all been avoiding. You're not wrong to be afraid, Taeyang continued. Her voice was gentle but firm. My grandmother was Captain Bo-Ra. I've read all the reports. I know what you saw. I know you watched her die and couldn't understand why she did it. I know you spent the rest of the battle frozen in terror. Ambassador Kirin stood up suddenly. We fought alongside you. We won that battle together. No, Taeyang said simply. We won that battle. You watched, and that's okay. It's not okay, Kirin said. His voice broke. We're supposed to be warriors. We're supposed to be brave. But we couldn't move. We just sat there while you died for us. You're alive, Taeyang said. That means my grandmother's math worked. She traded her life for yours. For all of yours. That was the deal. She knew it. She accepted it. Why can't you? Because we're cowards, Daewon said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Because we let you do what we couldn't. Because we took credit for your sacrifice. Because we've spent 50 years pretending to be heroes when we were really just survivors. Taeyang studied him for a moment. You're Commander Daewon. You were the fleet commander at Corvin Belt. I was. You gave the order to hold defensive positions. You didn't join the charge. No, I didn't. That was the right decision, Taeyang said. The room erupted in confusion. That was not what anyone expected her to say. If you had followed us, Taeyang continued, you would have gotten your ships destroyed. You didn't have the training. You didn't have the mindset. You would have just died without accomplishing anything. By holding position, you gave us a safe line to fall back to. You provided covering fire. You rescued survivors. You did what you were capable of doing. That's not cowardice. That's tactics, and we felt like cowards, Daewon said. I know. But here's what you don't understand. We don't think you're cowards. We think you're sane. Taeyang stood up slowly. Let me explain something about humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, disease, weather, everything wanted us dead. So we learned to do math that other species don't do. She walked to the display screen and pulled up a tactical map of Corvin Belt. When my grandmother saw those 5 Vren dreadnoughts, she did a calculation. Her ship was already damaged. Crew casualties at 40%, weapons at 60%. She wasn't going to make it out of that fight anyway. So she looked at the cost-benefit. Die slowly while the Vren destroy her and then kill thousands more. Or die quickly while taking 5 enemy capital ships with her. The math was obvious to her. 320 lives that were already lost in exchange for 5 major enemy vessels, and thousands of lives saved. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't insanity. It was just math. But those 320 lives included hers, Commander Saran said. Yes. And that's what makes it different for humans. Taeyang returned to her seat. Other species calculate survival of the individual first. Humans calculate survival of the mission first. The individual is just another number in the equation. If trading my life saves 10 others, that's good math. If trading 100 lives saves 1,000, that's good math. We do the calculation and we accept the answer. Hyojin raised her hand hesitantly. Taeyang nodded at her. Ma'am, that sounds like you don't value your lives at all. We value them exactly as much as they're worth in context, Taeyang replied. My life is precious to me. I want to live. I have grandchildren I want to see grow up. But if my death means those grandchildren get to live, then the math says I die. I won't like it. But I'll do it. Because the math is the math. How do you teach people to think like that? Daewon asked. You don't. It's not taught. It's how we evolved. Every human does this calculation automatically. We've been doing it for 200,000 years. Taeyang looked around the table. But here's the important part. We don't expect you to think like us. We don't want you to. If everyone fought like humans do, we'd all be extinct. Someone has to be smart enough to survive. So what do you need from us? Ambassador Kirin asked. Support, logistics, rescue operations. Hold the perimeter while we go into the center. Pull us out if we get in over our heads. Do the things that humans are bad at. We're excellent at dying gloriously. We're terrible at planning long-term defensive strategies. She smiled, and it was a sad smile. My grandmother would have been a terrible fleet commander. She was too willing to trade pieces. But you, Commander Daewon, you kept your fleet intact. You made sure there was something left after the battle. We need that. We need people who value survival the way you do. Because once we've killed all the Vren, someone has to rebuild civilization. And that's a job for people who are good at living. The meeting continued for another hour. This time the conversation was honest. No one pretended to be braver than they were. The veterans admitted their limitations. Taeyang explained what her forces could and could not do. They created a battle plan that played to everyone's strengths. The Galactic fleet would provide covering fire and secure escape routes. The human forces would hit the Vren center and force them to break formation. When the Vren scattered, the Galactic fleet would pick them off. It was not glorious. It was not equal. The humans would take 90% of the casualties, but the math worked. After the meeting, Daewon found himself walking with Admiral Taeyang to the docking bay. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Do you ever get scared?" "All the time," Taeyang admitted. "Fear is how you know you're still alive. The trick is not letting fear stop you from doing the math. What if the math says you die?" "Then I die." She stopped at her ship's gangway. "But I die having done what needed to be done. My grandmother understood that. I understand that. And someday, if there's ever another war, my grandchildren will understand it too." "I'm sorry," Daewon said, "for not following her charge. For letting her die alone." She wasn't alone. She had her crew, and she had a mission that mattered. "That's more than most people get." Taeyang smiled at him. "Stop apologizing for being sane, Commander. The galaxy needs both kinds of people. The ones who do the impossible, and the ones who remember why it mattered." She boarded her ship. Daewon watched it detach from the station and move into formation with the rest of the human fleet. Hyojin joined him at the observation window. "Sir, do you think we'll survive this?" "I don't know," Daewon admitted. "But I know the humans will do everything possible to make sure we do. Even if it costs them everything." The joint fleet began its jump to Corvin Belt. In the human section, soldiers were laughing and playing music. In the galactic section, veterans were trying not to think about what came next, and somewhere ahead the Vren were waiting. The Vren had turned Corvin Belt into a fortress. Sensor readings showed over 400 ships arranged in defensive positions around the mining colonies. Minefields blocked the obvious approaches. Weapon platforms covered every angle. They had learned from their first defeat and prepared accordingly. Commander Daewon studied the tactical display on his command screen. 50 years ago, he had sat in a similar chair, looking at a similar problem. This time felt different. This time he was not pretending to be brave. He was just trying to do his part. "Fleet is in position," Hyojin reported from her station. "All ships ready on your command." "Hold position," Daewon ordered. "Wait for Admiral Taeyang's signal." The Galactic fleet formed a wide perimeter around the belt. 300 ships, thousands of lives, all following standard defensive doctrine. They would provide covering fire and support. That was their role. That was what they could do. The human fleet was positioned at the edge of scanner range. 50 ships, small and quiet, waiting. Daewon opened a private channel to Taeyang's flagship. Her face appeared on his screen. She looked calm. "Ready? Any last advice?" he asked. "Yes, when we go in, don't follow us. Don't try to save us. Just hold your position and be ready to clean up what's left." "That sounds like you expect heavy losses." "I expect reality," Taeyang replied. "The Vren outnumber us 8-1. We're going to take casualties. That's acceptable. What's not acceptable is wasting those casualties by having you throw away your fleet trying to rescue us." "Understood. And Commander, thank you for being here. My grandmother would have appreciated having someone sane watching her back." The channel closed. A moment later, the human fleet moved. They did not advance cautiously. They did not probe for weaknesses. They dropped out of formation and accelerated to maximum speed, heading straight for the densest part of the Vren defense. "They're insane," someone muttered on the Galactic fleet's command channel. Daewon said nothing. He had seen this before. This was not insanity. This was human math. The Vren opened fire. The human ships did not try to dodge. They took the hits and kept going. When the first human vessel's shields failed, it kept advancing. When its hull breached, it kept advancing. When it finally died, it rammed the nearest Vren platform before exploding. One human ship traded for one defensive platform. The math was even. But then the second human ship rammed a Vren cruiser. And the third took out a weapon satellite. The humans were trading themselves for specific targets, carefully selected to open holes in the Vren defense. All ships, prepare for support fire, Daewon ordered. Target the gaps as they appear. The Galactic fleet opened up with long-range weapons. They did not advance. They did not charge. They just provided covering fire exactly as planned. It was not glorious, but it was effective. The human fleet reached the Vren center. Then things got complicated. Major Wanbin led a boarding party onto a Vren flagship. Hyojin watched the scanner tracks. 20 humans in powered armor cut through the hull and disappeared inside the massive enemy vessel. They were outnumbered 50-1. Standard doctrine said they would die in minutes. They lasted 25 minutes. When they finally died, the Vren flagship was drifting blind and helpless. Wanbin's team had destroyed the bridge, the communications array, and the navigation systems before being overwhelmed. The flagship collided with another Vren ship and both vessels exploded. 20 humans traded for 2 capital ships. The math worked. More human vessels pushed deeper into the Vren formation. They used tactics that made no tactical sense. A damaged destroyer accelerated instead of retreating, ramming itself through 3 Vren frigates before its reactor gave out. A frigate with failed weapons flew directly into the center of a Vren squadron and self-destructed, taking 4 enemies with it. Every loss hurt. But every loss accomplished something. Sir, the humans are down to 38 ships, Hyojin reported. Her voice was shaking. They've lost 12 vessels in the first 15 minutes. Have they opened the gap? Daewon asked. Yes. The Vren center is collapsing. Then they're winning. Daewon stood up. All ships advanced to secondary positions. Prepare to engage scattered Vren forces. The Galactic fleet moved forward cautiously. They were not charging. They were not being heroic. They were just moving into position to exploit the opening the humans had created with their lives. Admiral Tae Yang's flagship took heavy fire. Hyojin watched the damage reports come in. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Shields at 20%. Main weapons offline. Should we send support? Hyojin asked desperately. No, Daewon said, even though every instinct screamed at him to help. We stay in position. That's our job. On screen, Taeyang's ship kept fighting, even damaged, even dying. It targeted a Vren command carrier and refused to back down. The 2 vessels traded fire at point-blank range. Neither would retreat. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of ramming the Vren carrier, Taeyang's ship fired boarding pods. Not to destroy the carrier. To capture it. What is she doing? Someone asked on the Galactic command channel. Daewon understood. She's doing the math. Destroying that carrier would remove 1 ship from the battle. Capturing it gives us 1 ship and removes 1 from them. The math is better. Human Marines flooded onto the Vren carrier. They did not try to hold it. They fought straight to the bridge and captured the enemy commander alive. Then they broadcast his surrender order across all Vren channels. The effect was immediate. Vren ships started hesitating. Some stopped firing. Some started retreating. They had expected humans to kill them. They had not expected to be offered mercy. They're confused, Hyojin said. The Vren are confused by mercy. Daewon saw the opportunity. This was the moment. This was where the Galactic fleet could actually help. All ships broadcast surrender terms on all Vren frequencies. Tell them we're accepting prisoners. Tell them the battle is over. Across the fleet, communications officers began broadcasting. The message was simple. Stop fighting and live. Keep fighting and die. The choice was yours. More Vren ships stopped firing. Some began breaking formation, trying to escape. That was when Daewon made his decision. Helm, intercept course on the Vren rear fleet. All ships form up on my position. Hyojin stared at him. Sir, that's dangerous? Yes, but look at the math. Daewon pulled up the tactical display. That rear fleet is trying to escape. If they get away, they'll regroup and attack more colonies. More millions will die. But if we cut off their escape, they'll surrender. We can end this right now. The humans would charge in, Hyojin said quietly. We're not humans. We'll do it our way. Calculated risk instead of certain sacrifice. But we'll still do it. Daewon opened fleet-wide channels. All ships, this is Commander Daewon. I know you're scared. I know you don't want to charge like the humans do. But we don't have to. We just have to block their escape route and make them see that surrender is better than death. Can you do that? Silence for a moment. Then one by one, the Galactic ships confirmed their orders. They were not charging mindlessly. They were not ignoring danger. but they were moving forward instead of holding back. For the first time in 50 years, the Galactic Fleet was taking risks. Ambassador Kiran's Vraxian ships moved alongside Daiwan's vessels. "This is Ambassador Kiran. Vraxian Third Fleet is with you, Commander." "We ran once." "Not today." More veterans joined the formation. Not all of them, but enough. The Galactic Fleet cut across the Vren retreat path. They did not attack. They just positioned themselves as a wall, and they broadcast the same message: surrender and live. Fight and die. Choose. The Vren chose to surrender. One by one, Vren ships powered down their weapons. The battle was over. Final casualty count came in an hour later. Human losses were brutal. 21 ships destroyed, 40% casualties. Exactly what Admiral Taeyang had expected. Galactic Fleet losses were surprisingly light. 15 ships destroyed, 20% casualties. Far better than any projection. The math had worked. The humans had created the opening by paying the price. The Galactic Fleet had exploited that opening by being smart instead of brave. Together they had won. Day one found Admiral Taeyang in the medical bay. She had taken shrapnel in the final exchange and was being treated. She waved off the medics when she saw him. "You actually did it," she said. "You charged. Not like us, but you still moved forward." "You showed me that there's more than one kind of courage," Day one replied. "I'll never fight like you do, but I can fight like me. And that's enough. It's more than enough. You saved lives by taking that risk. You calculated the acceptable cost and paid it. That's what leaders do." Taeyang smiled. "My grandmother would have liked you." I wish I could have told her that I understood what she did. She knew. They always know. Taeyang looked out the window at the damaged ships limping back to formation. "The veterans will still be afraid of us." "That won't change." "No," Day one agreed. "But maybe they'll understand why. And maybe that's enough." 3 months later, Day one stood in the Galactic Military Academy. He was giving another speech. But this time it was different. "I was at Corvin Belt," he told the young cadets. "Both battles, 50 years apart. And I want you to know the truth. I was terrified. I froze during the first battle. I almost froze during the second. But I learned something important.